Today, I am joined by the incredibly talented and inspiring Ian Coursey. Ian is an incredible actor, singer, and musician. He is currently an understudy for the roles of Jared and Connor on the tour of my favorite musical, Dear Evan Hansen. Thank you so much, Ian, for joining me on the Inspiration Show. It's such an honor to speak with you.
Thanks for having me, Alison. I'm really excited.
Do I have your permission to post this episode of the Inspiration Show on social media?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, when did you discover that you had a passion for singing and theater?
Hmm. Well, I was always interested in theater, and I always loved singing. My mom tells me I was running around the house singing from a very early age, but I was also playing baseball for most of my childhood because my brother was a big baseball player. So I was kind of like Troy Bolton. I was like, oh, I love baseball, but I love theater. And I joined, my parents signed me up for a couple theater camps as a kid. And then I joined this one company called Lumina Studio Theater, and it was a youth Shakespearean company. And it was really my first exposure to really acting and good training. And the director there, his name was David Minton, was fantastic. And he kind of passed on his passion to all of us, and he loved teaching kids. But I was still kind of like on the edge about like what I want to do in college, what I want to do with my career, because I was really set on playing baseball. But then freshman year, this is the moment that defined it all. Freshman year, I was sitting in the fall show in the audience, and they were doing the play Noises Off, which is an awesome show, and I'd never seen it. And I was sitting with my ex-girlfriend at the time and my mom. And I remember like 10 minutes into the show, I just looked over to my mom and I was like, I want to do that. And it was just, I was so overcome with emotion. And then I auditioned for the spring musical, which was Titanic. And I'd never auditioned for anything. I never had any singing lessons. And I got a lead role in that freshman year, and that kind of set everything on its course.
I love that. First of all, I can connect to you personally because I had that exact same experience. I was sitting in the audience of a show and I turned to my mom and I was like, I'm going to be doing that one day. I don't know how, but I'm going to get there. And then exactly 5 years later, I was on the exact same stage doing the exact same show. And it's just like, it's the greatest feeling in the world. And number two, I feel like I've been living under a rock because I did not know Titanic was a musical.
Oh my gosh, Alison, it's one of my favorite musicals. It's by Maury Yeston, and I think it's one of the best ensemble shows. That and Hunchback are the two best ensemble shows in my opinion. It's so beautiful. It's not like Jack and Rose. It kind of focuses on 6 or 7 different main characters when the Titanic was going down, but it's a great show. It's Brian Darcy James's like
Oh, wow.
first big role. It's pretty cool. Check it out.
I definitely will. So, what would you say inspired you to become a performer, and who has been an inspiration of yours throughout your career?
My biggest inspiration is probably my aunt. Her name's Annie Griffin, and she's been in the arts her whole life. Now she's a movie director, but she used to be an actor. And so growing up, she was always like there talking to me about the arts and all that. And she inspired me to follow in her footsteps, and she's always like my mentor whenever I need anything or any advice. But I had this one of my very first voice teacher, and I think he'll continue to be my voice teacher for the rest of my life. His name's Rolando Sanz. He kind of took me under his wing my freshman year, and he really inspired me to reach my full potential. And he taught me how to sing. He gave me a lot of opportunities. So those, Annie and Rolando, are really inspiring to me. But I love, Brian Darcy James is a huge inspiration for me as an actor. Jeremy Jordan, vocally, all those guys. I've been getting into movies a lot, so I love Leonardo DiCaprio, all his stuff. Yeah, I think everything inspires me. I love watching art. I love creating art.
I love it. Can you take us back to the first time that you experienced theater and how you're feeling at that time?
Ooh, first time I experienced theater. The first Broadway show I saw was it was either Matilda or The Color Purple, but I really remember The Color Purple. It's just such a crazy experience. I didn't know the show at all, and I went in with my parents, and I was surrounded by all these really old women, and they were having such visceral reactions to the show. And who was in it? I think Jennifer Hudson was in it at the time for like a limited run with Cynthia. And it was, I don't know. It's kind of the same feeling I had in high school. Like, man, I want to do that. I want to be a part of this community. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah.
But it's a really special thing to now be a part of the community after wanting to do it for so long. And trust me, the community has flaws, and there are many things that need to be worked on, but it's pretty cool to be accepted for the art that we create.
Yeah, and getting to create the art is just incredible. But going in to see the art, I find it so special because I recently saw a show that like I went in and I knew nothing about it. Like for example, with Dear Evan Hansen, I think I can speak for both of us when I can say we both know the show like we know the back of our hands. But when you go in to see a show and not knowing what to expect, it's so special. And then when you go in to see a show that you've seen so many times and like it's different, or like the actors change it in a way, or they make the role their own, it's so special because you never know what's going to come to you when you see theater.
Totally. And one of the downfalls of being on tour is I don't really get the chance to see any other shows because we're doing the show every night. And then if we do have any free time, we're traveling. So probably the last time I saw a show was before this job. But it's really cool because whenever I'm not on, I get to sneak out in the audience and watch the show whenever I want. And there's a lot of people and it's their first time seeing it. And so I get to kind of secondhand experience what they're going through. Like I hear all the audible gasps and people crying. So it's cool. I actually don't remember. I knew the show through the cast album first, so I kind of knew going into the first time I saw it what was going to happen. But I do wish I went in blind and I had no idea what was going to happen in the show or what the music was.
Yeah, especially
show.
Yeah, especially with Hansen, it's a big show. So fast forward to now, in 2020, you began attending the University of Michigan. You are a part of the musical theater class of 2024. And at UMich, you participated in many productions, including Dogfight and Hair. And you also assistant music directed the school's production of The Wild Party and played the saxophone in The Pit of Funny Girls. So what were your experiences like doing these productions? And do you feel that they've impacted you and helped shape you into the performer you are today?
Oh, yeah. I think, well, starting off freshman year in Michigan, it was all online, which was really tough because all of our classes, not all of our classes, most of our classes are performance-based. So that was kind of a big challenge at Michigan at first. But freshman year, we really learned a lot about ourselves as individuals and artists because we were by ourselves for a lot of it. But sophomore year is when all that stuff happened. And I remember first semester, we had our first auditions in person in like 2 years, and it was for The Wild Party, and I didn't get anything. I didn't get any callbacks or any of that, but I really wanted to be a part of it, so I reached out to the music director. I was like, hey, I would love to help out. I'll do anything you want. And it's the first time I'd done that. That's actually not true. We'll get back to that later. But I really wanted to be a part of the process, and so I kind of took on programming the pit, which means there's a software they use when the band is playing during the show, and there's a pedal that
for waving, right?
Like for waving, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I just sit there and like go through the score and put in all the different patches that I wanted to use in the piano part, which was really cool. It was tedious, but I learned a lot being around the band and being around the music director. And then I got asked to play saxophone in The Pit of Funny Girl.
That's just wow.
Student production. It was crazy. It was very scary for me because I've played saxophone since third grade, but and I stopped senior year of high school, and then I didn't play for a year, and I was playing like band music, right? I've never played in a musical. I was always very scared of doing that, and so I got the book with all the music, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be tough. And it was me and then all the jazz majors at Michigan, and I'm like, oh my god, these guys all go to school to do this. Right. I haven't played in a year. So I was practicing that stuff for like 7 hours a day. It was very stressful, but we got through it and it was awesome. It was a great experience. And then the second semester sophomore year came, and that was a great semester. I was feeling like I learned a lot about myself in the classes that we were doing that first semester. In order to apply it to like auditions and working in the room. And so they were doing Dogfight. And I auditioned, everyone auditioned. It was a crazy call. And I got Eddie Birdlace, who's the lead guy. And it was just such a special experience. It was a really tough role. It's a very hard role vocally and emotionally. But I had an awesome cast. I had my boys who we were all singing and dancing together. And my friend Shell was playing Rose. She was very supportive of everything. But that was a show that I learned a lot about the boundaries that I could push myself to. Learned a lot about working with people in a room that I hadn't done that since senior year of high school when COVID shut everything down. And then this is the last thing and then we got to auditions for Hair, which was our UProd, the university production, which is the big main stage show. And I had done Hair 3 years ago, the 3 years before that. And I was George Berger. It was a really, really awesome experience, and I learned a lot. But I went into this, I was like, man, I would love to just be in the ensemble or do anything. Because I'm like, oh, I'm at Michigan. Everyone's like, all the seniors are going to get cast, and I have no chance of getting one of these leads. And then auditions went very well. I got cast as George Berger again. And so I got the chance to kind of lead the company with my friend Mark, who I had kind of idolized Mark the past like 4 years because I watched Mark on the Jimmy Awards and kind of do all this social media stuff. And I was like, man, this is crazy. I'm kind of working with the people that I really admired for all these years. And that was great. And Gavin Creel and Will Swenson came back and talked to us, and we that was really cool. And they came to closing night of the show, and it was a very freeing experience. Hair is an awesome show. I don't know if you know it very well, but it's a crazy show. We kind of rewrote, I don't know if we were allowed to do this, but we kind of rewrote all of Act 2.
No way.
The whole trip, we kind of did our own thing with that.
I love that.
Really cool. And the great thing about that show, there's so much material to cover and a lot of material that is tough to talk about sometimes. So the first like 3 weeks of rehearsal, we didn't even get on our feet. We were just talking for weeks about like what the material meant, what we want to do with it, what the impact is. And that's something that not a lot of productions do, which is very important. I hope more shows start doing that.
Yeah, I have to say I love those stories, and I love hearing about like musician Ian, because like I know he was like actor, singer Ian, or like Connor, like insanely cool Jared Kleinman, but like you doing saxophone, like I never knew that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I got involved in band in third grade, and then I all the teachers that I had in band were awesome. I think that's a big reason why I kept it up. But I got to high school, I became first chair in saxophone, which was really, I will say I never really practiced a lot. I was kind of just naturally good at it. I wish I practiced more. I also played piano for a couple of years, and I quit because I was playing baseball, but I've started picking it up again. But I do wish I practiced more as a kid. I think that would have served me better right now.
When you're not on, you can go to the pit.
Exactly. We can just go up there and put on headphones and listen with, I actually haven't done that yet. I've been meaning to do that.
Do it.
It's really cool.
It like actually kills me to say this, but the journey's coming to an end soon. You have to do it.
No, don't tell me.
It makes me cry. I'm gonna cry so much. Oh my goodness.
Me too.
So you have been a part of many amazing productions, such as The Music Man, Spring Awakening, Les Mis, Cabaret, and Catch Me If You Can, and you've stepped into so many incredible roles. Out of all the roles you have stepped into, is there one that you feel best represents you?
That's tough. I love all the characters I play. Probably my favorite one that's like closest to my heart is probably Berger in Hair, just because I've done him twice. I really got to explore him and bring myself into him. I loved playing Berger. Moritz was really cool to play. It's not a role that I would usually play. and I got to, it's tough, dark material. So I learned a lot about how I deal with that and how much of myself I can bring to a role without it hurting me or, you know, getting a little crazy on stage. But Connor and Jared are pretty, spent a lot of time with them. I spent the last
Yep.
10 months with them. Also, it's tough because my personality doesn't really fit with either of them, but I see myself a lot in both of them. Say it's easier for me to get into Connor's headspace. Well, it's interesting because you only really see Connor for who he is in the first scene, or the
Right.
first scenes, and then he becomes kind of Evan's
Mhm.
perception of what he is. But it's always fun to be him. Jared,
Yeah,
I'm a
no.
silly guy, so I like being silly on stage and making people laugh. It's always very fulfilling because with Jared, you just walk on stage, make the whole audience laugh for like
Yeah.
2 minutes and then leave. Quick change, go make them laugh again. And I don't know.
See, that's like the way that I always explain the show, like as a roller coaster, because you're laughing, you're crying, you're trying not to sing in the audience, and then you're laughing, and then you're crying again. And it's just the beauty of what that show can do. And I mean, even with Jared, like it's self-explanatory. You can walk on the stage and just stand there and be Jared, not even say a line, and everyone will go crazy.
It's true. Well, people always ask me like, what kind of show is it? Is it a comedy? And I'm like, kind of like it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a downer, but there's some really funny parts of it.
Yeah, I talk about the show so much and people ask me, oh, can you like tell me a bit about it? Like, what is it about? I was like, okay, so we can sit here or you can actually go see the show. And by the time you see the show, I will probably be halfway through. So just go see the show.
It's a tough one to explain. I don't know how many Uber drivers I've had to tell
Oh
about
my God.
the show and how many like summaries I've tried to come up in my head. I'm like, okay, there's this guy. He's really like, I'm not even gonna try to
Yeah, don't,
explain.
yeah. But going back to the question, like I have my list of roles I want to see Ian play and we're gonna go through it quickly. Is that all right? Okay.
Let's do it.
So we've got JD, because I mean, like self-explanatory, your recent TikTok, I mean, been on repeat. And then we have Veronica, because like 54 Below, I mean,
Sure.
killed it. It was genius to like swap it, genius. And then we have Alexander Hamilton. That would be really
That would
good.
be awesome.
That'd be really good. Come to Toronto, it's playing. Just hop on stage.
Are they in Toronto right now?
Yeah, they're here.
Oh, that's
Hop on
awesome.
stage. And then I really want to see you tackle Evan. Like I'm trying to picture it, but like pull a Sam Premack, do all three.
I would love to play Evan Alison. It's kind of it's tricky for me because I'm the only guy that doesn't cover Evan out of the covers. So I don't know, it feels kind of taboo for me to ever sing waving or like
Yeah.
for forever. But there a couple of people in the company been like, man, I wish I could hear you sing that. And I'm like, I know, I love singing it. So
I
maybe in
mean,
another dimension.
yeah, your voice is just incredible. But like to see you do that song, I think would just be awesome.
Thanks, Alison. I
And
mean,
I
before I got cast, I was a wannabe Evan. I don't think I ever was in auditions for him. I think I was always in for Connor or Jared. Because I'm not like really an Evan physically,
it would
I'm,
be
I'm
cool though.
like a little small guy, but
It
yeah.
would be really cool. And I have to ask, what was it like for you managing and learning those true roles while still being a student?
Mm, it's tricky because I'm a junior right now, technically. And going into the process, I kind of assumed that I could do a lot of online classes at Michigan because the previous year they had like hundreds of classes that you could take online. But it turns out that this year they got rid of everything. And so I really couldn't do anything in Michigan. And so I'm from Maryland. And so I went to my state school, University of Maryland, and I was like, hey, can I take some online classes and transfer the credits? So the past 8 months, I've been getting all my academic credits out of the way. So then if I go back next year, I can just knock out all the MT classes and graduate on time, hopefully. But it's tricky. The good thing is we have a good amount of free time on the road. Like the show doesn't start till 7:30 most nights. So I have all day to like do my own thing. And if I'm not on, I have time during the show to do my homework and all that stuff. And the time when we were learning the roles, it was still summer, so I didn't have any classes to take.
Perfect.
Classes kind of started like a month or two in. So by the time I really had to like dedicate time to my work, I felt pretty comfortable in the roles, and I felt like I could jump into them if I needed to.
Yeah.
But there's been a couple of us who are doing classes online. Keeps you busy if you
Yeah.
don't have things to do.
I mean, just doing the show keeps you busy, but managing being a student too and tackling that show, just incredible. I don't know how you do it.
Well,
And
thank you.
this is what, month 9 on tour, right?
Month 9 on tour. We've got a little
Oh,
over 3 months to go.
no. So when COVID-19 hit, you didn't allow the pandemic to take away theater. True actor. You co-founded an educational theater company called Virtual Q. Can you share with us a little bit about Virtual Q and what inspired you to start it and its main mission?
Yeah. Well, I was in a bunch of companies outside of my high school for all 4 years. Um, there were two companies. One was Young Artists of America and one was Ovations Theater. And they all had really great youth programs for kids. And when the pandemic shut everything down, all those programs closed too. And I was sitting around with two of my friends, Emmy and Molly, and we were like, we got to do something. Like what are these kids doing all day? They're just like pent up in their houses, like not getting to express themselves. And for me, like all those programs that I did as a kid really shaped my love for theater and like who I am now. And COVID was a very tough time for everyone. So we wanted to do anything we could to help these kids out. So we started on a whim. It kind of started out as a joke. We were like, what if we make a theater company? And then we did it. And
Did it.
it's called Virtual Q. We should probably change the name because we're not virtual anymore. But we started with like, I think we started with like 15 kids maybe, all on Zoom. And we just kind of coached them. Like I was the music director, Molly was the director, and Emmy was the choreographer. So we would like switch off who teaches every hour. And we would, at first we started with kind of a Broadway review of a bunch of different songs, and every kid had a solo. And then we had a couple group numbers that I had to edit painstakingly, like line up all the vocals and everything online. And then we put that out and people loved it. And then I think we did that twice. We had 2 reviews. And then we decided, and then trying to get timeline right. A middle school in the area reached out to us and they were like, do you guys want to direct our drama club online? We were like, yeah. So we got a bunch more kids and we had a good amount of money coming in so we could really benefit the program. And we saved up for the next summer to do an in-person show. And we did The Little Mermaid and we had a bunch of kids come. And it was awesome. It was so cool because they were all so excited. And I figured out how much I love teaching and teaching voice because I've gotten so much knowledge from all the great teachers that I have. And so now to get to pass that on to them is really great. And then it's continued, but since I'm on tour, I had to miss last summer. And they did Beauty and the Beast. And they've still been doing shows, but it's tough because they're in person now. So there's not much that I can do. But I really love it. I'm really proud that we started it. I think it's a great program. I hope it continues. Yeah.
And it's so special because last year was my last year of elementary school, and I went to an art school, and now my first year in high school, I study theater. So we had shows taken away from us, and we couldn't do things that we had originally planned. So for you to create a platform where you say no to those cancellations and you can do it safely, it's so special because we couldn't really control, COVID kind of taking our art away because, it's a collaborative art and you have to be with people. But for you to do that, I think is so special and not letting the art be taken away and just turn it online.
Thanks. It was fun to give the kids a community because like for the whole summer it was just them and their parents.
Yeah.
And so I remember the first time that we gathered in person. Actually, I think the first time we like rehearsed on Zoom, and then we got everyone together for a final performance. It was all socially distanced and everyone was masked. But the first time that we all got together, it was so cool because I was like, man, I've been working with these kids for months and now they're real and they're singing all the stuff that I told them to do. And it was really special.
It's so special. So, as we said earlier, you are currently part of the national tour of Dear Evan Hansen, understudying the role of Jared and Connor. Can you share a little bit of your DEH journey leading up to this very point?
Yeah, it was a long journey. It
Most of
was,
them.
fun fact, my older brother's name is Connor Coursey, which is really cool. So we just had rehearsal today, so I got to write his name on the cast, and it's always very cute. But I I'm from Maryland, and so the show came to Arena Stage, which is in DC. I'm right on the DC border, so I'm very close. I remember walking around my hometown and seeing all these posters up with the blue polo and the cast. And I was like, hey, it's a guy from Pitch Perfect. And I never saw the show when it was in DC. I was so bummed because there were a lot of changes that they made. There was a couple songs they cut, like Bedroom Down the Hall.
Right.
And I've seen videos of like Mike Feist being in some numbers that he like originally Connor was in Good For You, like kind of
No
like
way. I did not know that.
yeah. Um, and fun fact, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, there used to be an ensemble in the show of like high school kids. And so the opening number used to be all the kids getting ready to go to school. Then they cut the ensemble
Oh,
because
wait. Sorry, question. The opening number was not Anybody Have a Map. It was some whole different song.
it was a whole different side. Oh, what was it called?
I have to hear this.
I think it was called This Is Me, not like the Greatest Showman
Great
one.
Showman, yeah.
Uh, but Pierce, I don't know if you know Pierce, he's one of the
Course.
covers. He sang it in LA because Alex Lacamoire came out, and we kind of had a little concert after the show where we the two of the mom covers sang Bedroom Down the Hall, and then Pierce sang This Is Me.
Need to
It was
hear
really
this.
cool seeing all the, I actually don't know if there's a recording somewhere. There's a lot of great cut songs from the show, but back on track. I never saw it in DC. And then the cast album came out and I loved it. Who doesn't love singing all that stuff? And at that time, I really wanted to be Evan. I was like, oh man. But I was told that I would never be Evan because I couldn't sing it, but I can now. But that doesn't. But what year was it? I think it was my senior year or my junior year. My best friend Danny and I, there was an open call up in New York, and we were like, let's go. And we went and we got to Pearl Studios, and there were all these guys lined up along the block. And it was the first open call I've been to. I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of scary. Like people were in casts and polos. Some people had their guitars. I was like, do you know what show? There's no guitar in this show. And then I went in, and Tara Rubin, who's the casting director, like Tara Rubin casting, she's very big. It was just her in the room, her and the accompanist. And I was like, oh my God, it's Tara Rubin. That's pretty cool. And I went in and I sang, like a Callum Scott song, I think.
Love Callum Scott. Genius.
Yeah, I think they were asking for pop songs at the time. And I sang, nothing happened. Danny actually got a call back for Evan. And I was like, what? How did Danny get a call back? And he went back up the next week to read for everyone, and he didn't get it. And I was like, okay, then my journey's done. And then second semester, sophomore year rolls around when all this crazy stuff is going on with Dogfight and Hair. And I get a self-tape request for the show out of nowhere. And one of Tara Rubin's assistants is like, hey, Ian, we'd love to see you for the show. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I recorded a video, and it was, I think at the time they were looking between Broadway and the touring cast, because I think they had a couple of positions to fill. I sent the video in. I felt pretty good about it. And then I was waiting, and I waited for like a month. And then I got an email that they were sending me straight through to final callbacks in New York. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And it was actually the day after we closed Hair. It was like April 17th or something. But then I got COVID.
Oh God.
Right before, it was during Tech Week of Hair. Oh my God, this was the worst. It was the worst. And so I tested positive right after I got home from our SITS probe. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Because I had an understudy, but he was very important in the ensemble. And so he couldn't really step into the role because he had his own track to do. And oh, that was the worst week of my life. But I got to come back to Hair for the final dress. I had to be masked.
Yeah,
Um, and I had to be masked for opening night too.
but at least you got to do it.
At least I got to do it, but here's the kicker. I kind of blew all my steam in the final dress rehearsal. And so I got to opening night. My voice was gone. Like still getting, I didn't have COVID, but I was like getting over the symptoms of COVID. And my voice was shot. And that was the hardest show I've ever had to do to get, because Berger is screaming really high notes and he's very energetic and really using his voice. And I couldn't do any of that because my voice was gone. And my voice teacher rushed backstage and she was like, "We're going to get you on steroids. Everything's going to be fine." And I was like, cool. I knew I was going to get through the show because we had 4 shows, but I was like, I have my final callback like in 2 days and my voice is gone. So they got me on steroids and it was crazy. It brought my voice back in a second. And I went to the voice clinic and they were like, "You shouldn't sing for 2 months after this show." And I was like, here's the thing, I gotta go to New York and sing.
Yeah.
And it was this at the same time that we were starting rehearsals for the 54 Below show. And they were like, "It's your call, but you probably shouldn't do that." And I was like, I gotta do it. But I emailed the casting team and I was like, "Hey guys, I lost my voice. I'm still getting over it. I don't want to do any permanent damage. Could we wait a couple days?" And they moved my audition a couple days. And then I went to New York. I had my final, and it went really well. And I left. And I remember this was crazy. I was sitting in the drama bookshop and I got a call from the casting agent and I picked it up. I was like, "Hello." And she was like, "Hi, Ian. How's it going?" And I was like, "I'm great. What's up?" And she was like, "I hate to do this. Can you come back in tomorrow?" And I was like, "No, I thought I had it right there." It turns out they wanted me to be a little nerdier for Jared. So they were like, "Can you come in your nerdiest outfit?" And I had like a McLovin shirt, like a Hawaiian
Yes.
button up. I was in these really short shorts and these really long socks, and I was so nerdy. I did all the material again. They had this huge camera in the final callback set up to send to people. And then I got it the next, what was it, like a week ago. And I drop everything, drop all my summer plans and get to New York.
I love it. Yeah, like because Zoe Murphy's my dream role. I can't sing, so it's okay. We've lived the dream a different way. And then in school, I had to do a project where I had to do a nerdy twist on Little Red Riding Hood. And I'm that actor, loves to make people cry, loves to go into that like emotional kind of thing. I'm not like a funny actor. And then I like disguise my voice to kind of like sound like this and like try to be as nerdy as possible. Channeled my inner Will Rowland. Shout out to Will, we love you. And it was great. I got on stage and everyone started laughing, and it's just great, when you can make people laugh, especially, as I love to make people cry, making people laugh is just as fun. And I love being nerdy and I can't wait to explore that more. And I want to see you as Jared so bad, but we have some videos, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's cool when I wouldn't say I'm very nerdy appearance wise. I'm pretty nerdy like personality, but going into the audition, my friend Danny was like, "You're in for Jared?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, we gotta fix you up for this audition. But it's cool to just become someone that you're so different from. I was backstage about to go on for You Will Be Found, and Lily Thomas came up to me. She was like, "Which do you like better, Connor or Jared?" And I was like, I don't know what I said, but she was like, "You're like a chameleon. Like you're nothing like Jared, but you can do him so well." And I was like, "Oh." So it's fun.
It's the best thing to step into a role that's absolutely nothing like you, and you get to like step into those shoes and kind of bring yourself into those roles. I think it's more fun to do a role that's nothing like you.
Totally. I mean, it's always cool to like when you cross the threshold from being off stage to being on stage, you just become a completely new person. And it kind of takes over your whole body. It's really cool. I've experienced it a couple times with other shows, but this show in particular, just because I've spent so much time with it, I've really gotten to explore the characters and dive into the material because I'm doing it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the chameleon because, like, when you think about it, you're Ian. And I think it's safe to say Jared and Connor are like complete opposite of each other. So, to go into that chameleon effect, I think is super cool. I like that analogy.
Yeah, there was one rehearsal where we were in DC and we were short one guy. And so I had to play Connor and Jared.
Oh
And
God.
so it was crazy because there were a couple scenes like coming out of the computer lab scene where Connor's running off, Jared's coming in at the same time. I sprinted off stage, I made a hard left, I came around and I came out as Jared. Sincerely Me was a wild
I
ride.
was just gonna ask you about that because every time I have a guy on the show that covers all three roles or does two, I always ask about Sincerely Me because I always hear it's a nightmare. So please.
It's a little easier for me. I don't know how Reese does it. Reese is covering all three.
Okay.
And it makes sense in your body when you're actually doing it, but the hard thing is the harmonies. Because they're very tight, close harmonies, and they're all different. Connor and Jared are pretty on different sides of the harmonies, but like Evan and Connor are very similar. So I don't know how Reese does that. But in that rehearsal, I was doing all the Connor movement, and like whenever I was frozen and like a nipple thing, I was like saying the Jared lines.
Yeah.
It was great. It was fun.
The being frozen part, it gets me every time with like the orange light. Every single time it gets me. Like I know it's meant to be funny, but it's so funny.
It's tough to keep your balance in that position. You're like,
Yeah, because you're like
and
standing
you're like,
with
oh my
the
God.
heel and yeah, I love it. So you portray both Jared and Connor when you do the show. So what's it like juggling these two incredible characters? And which character do you feel represents you best? And what do you do to get into character?
Whenever I go on for Connor, I have my guitar with me, and it's cute. Right before every show, I play the song A Little Closer that they added for the movie.
Yeah,
For
I love
Connor.
that song.
I don't know. I think it's a pretty song. It kind of gets me in his headspace. But it's funny because when you're Jared, the show goes by a lot faster because you're on like every other scene. And when you leave the stage, you're sprinting to the quick change booth, and it's also another thing. Jared has like 14 quick changes. Evan changes like 3 times. So
Yeah,
Jared's got a much bigger wardrobe than Evan.
better one too. Actually,
Better
nah,
one.
no, the blue polo is iconic, but the Jared fits, come on.
They're so cool. They're so
Yeah.
and there's a lot of changes for Jared, but it's a very different vibe of the show when I'm one of the characters, because when I'm Jared, like I said, you're just going on and off and making people laugh. I have to warm up a lot more when I'm Jared because people don't really know this, but Jared is singing really high for the entire show. And a lot of the time you can't even hear him because like he's on the top line and waving, you'll be found reprise. And they mix it so it all sounds like one. So I feel like you're giving a lot of gas for not that much reward because everyone gives Evan all the high notes, but Jared's singing higher than Evan.
Especially in Good For You.
Yeah.
That high part,
It's crazy. And actually in the auditions, they had us sing it higher. They changed the harmonies in the auditions so they could test our range, which was kind of mean because then I had to relearn that song with the actual harmonies. But when I'm Connor, I'll put it this way. I have a lot more fun when I'm Jared, but I feel more fulfilled when I'm Connor because he has Sincerely Me and Disappear. He's got an awesome costume. I feel so cool in that costume.
yeah.
It's a lot more laid back when you're Connor because you have most of Act 2 off. You have little breaks in between all your scenes. But the writing's just so good. I love both the characters. I love doing them.
I gotta say, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but in Buffalo, I gotta steal you in your Jared costume for some photos. I mean, we gotta take some pictures as us, but like Jared photos.
That would be awesome. Well, I'll tell the costume team.
Jared photos. I love it. So what is your favorite part and most challenging part about portraying Jared and Connor?
For Jared, my most challenging part is keeping him really natural because I tend to kind of want to make him bigger, and sometimes I get into like cartoonish Jared land. But it's cool. It keeps me a lot more present when I'm just trying to talk like I would talk, but say these ridiculous, crazy things. And warming up for Jared is tough. And well, keeping my voice sustainable through one of his shows. I figured it out now, but in the beginning it was kind of tough because you have to figure out how much gas you can give it every number. in order to like save up for the You'll Be Found reprise, which doesn't seem that hard, but that's probably the hardest part.
Mhm.
Or the ending note in Sincerely Me when he's singing up there. That's pretty hard. For Connor, the challenging thing. I think something cool is what I was talking about earlier, where you have different perspectives of Connor. So I had to figure out who he was on that first day of school or at breakfast, because that's like Connor. And the last time you see him, it is in the computer lab. And then you have to make that switch right before you come in for Sincerely Me, that you're not Connor, you're Evan's perception of Connor. And then that kind of grows and disappear. And then top of Act 2, you're doing Sincerely Me reprise, but Jared's writing it. And so you're kind of Jared's perception of Connor, which isn't the same as the first one you did or Evan's perception, which is really cool. I know August, who's our principal, he kind of changes his hair a little bit for every Connor he does, which is really cool.
I really like that perception analogy. I've never really like looked at it through that lens, and that's one thing I love about having the cast on is because I think I know the show so well and I feel that I know the show so well, but to hear it from the people who are actually performing it and doing it every single night and how they interpret it, it's so different from how I think about it. And then when I go in to see that show for the last time, I take all those things and I was like, I see that now, or I like that, or that's different. And I really like that because it's so special about theater because you have the same script, same thing every time, except for like a couple tweaks because of the places that it's in. But it's super special to see how different it is every single time. Yeah, they had to cut because we don't have Trader Joe's in Canada. So yeah, every time. Yep. So they had to cut the Trader Joe's dumplings. They cut it.
That's such a good line.
It is. I know. So I'm excited to have it back in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Well, I had it in New York, but I'm excited to have it back in Buffalo. So what's your favorite song and scene from the show?
Oh, that's so tough.
It is.
I love doing Sincerely Me. Oh man, I love doing all the songs. Okay. The coolest song to do is Waving, because you just feel so cool when you're doing that song. Like you get in the diagonal and you're like, that's really fun. But the same with Sincerely Me, because you're just messing around the whole time. Like we just had a rehearsal now, and we can kind of mess around a little bit in rehearsal. So like I'm not even gonna tell you what we did, but like Jeffrey
I gotta crash one of your rehearsals.
Jeffrey had his glasses on today and he was like, they flew off in the middle of the song. I did a couple things to like make him break, and we were just laughing the whole time. It was so much fun.
Love it.
I love Good For You. Good For You is probably my favorite song in the show. It just slaps every time.
Every time. I love it. What do you say that you would enjoy most doing about the show and your favorite part about touring with the show?
It's funny because last year at Michigan, I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, it would be so cool to be on a tour, just like see the country. And it's true. It's the different cities is what keeps it fresh, which is kind of different than if I were doing a show in New York, because I would be coming from my house every day and then going to the theater. It's a little more consistent there. Out here, it's crazy. We've had a couple sit downs with like 3 or 4 weeks, but right now we're in a stretch of I think we're in like 14 1-weekers until the end of tour. We just have a new city every week, which gets tough, but it's really cool because I'm seeing a lot of places that I would never see, really. Like I can look out my window right now and Mexico is right there because we're in El Paso right now, which is crazy.
Yeah, every time I like text you guys, you're in a different place, and I'm just like,
Which makes the time zones tough, because I'm also taking voice lessons with my teacher back in Michigan, and so I'm like, okay, I'm in like Ottawa, Canada right now. Sorry, different time. And then what you say? What's the challenging thing?
Your favorite part about doing the show and touring?
Favorite part about doing the show? Well, it's cool being a cover because yes, I wish I was doing the show every night. That would be cool. But there's a lot of time off stage that we have, a lot of experiences, life experiences. I feel like I've grown a lot this year just as a person and really figuring myself out. So every time I go on, like there could be months in between one of my shows. And so I can bring a completely different approach to the material because I haven't done it in so long, it really stays fresh. And I'm kind of forced to keep it fresh because I could go on like that. Like if someone gets sick, we've had a couple.
Mid-show is crazy.
Mid-show is great. Like we had a show in San Fran where the show didn't even stop. Like our Alana went out, and within 2 minutes of her next entrance, Jill was on, and Jill was walking on stage. And they made the announcement at intermission that a cast change had happened, but I think it was pretty obvious to the audience. But
Yes, I know. I was talking to Val about it when she was on. Didn't Reese go on mid-show for Evan? Someone went on mid-show for Evan.
Reese and Pierce have both gone on mid-show.
With the cast and blow drying the cast, it makes me laugh. I mean, it's not funny, but it makes me laugh.
It happened at the exact same point in the show for both of them.
Right before waving or after waving?
Right after waving, there's a chant. That's kind of like the built-in part where the Evans can be like, I can't do it, which makes sense. It's really tough. And once you've sung waving, you're like, man, I have the rest of the show to go. I can't get through it. There was a time when like Anthony was getting his cast sawed off and Reese was in the chair next to him getting his cast put on. And like we had 4 different hair dryers. It's crazy.
Yeah, because I think one of the Broadway cast members, I can't remember specifically who it was, but when they were on, they told me that waving was actually written to be higher originally. If I'm not mistaken.
Better not have it. Well,
but that would have been insane.
That Ben Platt would do that. I'm sure he could sing it higher. I don't think anyone else can sing that. It's the first song of the show. What are they doing writing it so high?
Yeah. So for our final question, looking back on everything that you've achieved in this industry, what advice would you give to your younger self entering the industry?
I wish I didn't care what people thought of me much earlier. I don't care now, and it brings a lot of peace, but I spend a lot of my time like trying to prove myself to people. It's interesting being a cover because I'm not in the principal cast. So sometimes I feel like, oh man, people don't really know what I can do because they don't see me do it every night. But
follow his TikTok. Sorry, I had
follow the TikTok, but it took a lot of, I think I figured that out. I really figured that out this summer going into my sophomore year of college. I was like, why do I care so much? Like, we're all just doing, maybe people don't care and I'm just thinking that they care. Like if I crack, if I make any mistakes, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to hate me, but no one cares. There's a great quote that I live by, that I learned at the Michigan Summer Intensive my junior year. It's a man named Brent Wagner told it to me. And it became my senior quote in my yearbook. It's, you can't move forward while looking to the side. And it means you can't progress as an individual or as an artist if you're constantly like, oh, what's he doing? What's he doing? Oh, she's better than me. Oh, she can sing higher than me. Oh, she can do more turns than me. What is that going to do? Like that's all of that is completely out of your control. The only thing you can control in this industry is yourself and your reputation, because it's a tough industry and there's a lot of things that will go wrong. There's a lot of things that will go right, but the only thing you control is yourself, and reputation is everything. It's really cool this is my first like professional job, and it's the first time people are really seeing me. And so I'm really focused on like how I work with people and how they see me as a professional, because I want to work with these people in the future. They're all such amazing people. And I think we've made those connections that will happen. But that wouldn't have happened if I was like, oh my God, what's Reese doing? What's Pierce doing? Oh, what's Jeffrey doing? No, that doesn't matter. None of that matters. Let's focus on yourself.
You're all just incredible. And I love you all so much.
Oh,
Ian, thank you so much for joining me on the Inspiration Show. You are beyond incredible, and it was such an honor to speak with you. Thank you for inspiring me.
Thank you for inspiring me, Alison.